Chapter 3, Section 2, A Confederation of States. In 1776, the Declaration of Independence had asserted that the colonies were independent states. Even as the war got underway, the legislatures of the 13 states began to write their own constitutions. Within a year, almost all of them had new plans of government, reflecting the principles in the Declaration of Independence. In fact, the words of the Declaration were written right into the New York State Constitution. However, it was not until almost the end of the war that the states agreed to form a loose confederation. Comparing state constitutions. The state constitutions were similar in many ways. They all began with a statement of rights. These rights were guided by three founding ideals expressed in the Declaration of Independence: equality, freedom, and democracy. Each state constitution separated the powers of government into executive, legislative, and judicial branches. However, the state constitutions were far from being completely democratic. They did not establish governments by consent of all the governed. They typically limited voting rights to white men who paid taxes or owned a certain amount of property. Only New Jersey gave voting rights to women and African Americans who owned property. None of the original 13 states' constitutions outlawed slavery, and all states south of Pennsylvania denied slaves equal rights as human beings. Decisions in forming a national government. While the states were writing their constitutions, the Continental Congress was trying to decide how the nation as a whole should be governed. When Congress first met in 1774 to resolve disputes with Britain, it had no authority over the colonial legislatures. Even when directing the war effort, it had no authority over the states, often begging them for soldiers and supplies. Therefore, many members of Congress wanted to form a national government, one that had powers to govern the states. However, they knew this would be a tricky undertaking. After being controlled by Britain for so long, Americans were not inclined to hand over power to another central government, even one they elected. When Congress drafted the nation's first Constitution in 1777, it knew that many Americans feared a powerful national government. For that reason, the proposed Articles of Confederation created a framework for a loose confederation of states. Within this alliance, each state would retain sovereignty, freedom, and independence. Any power not specifically given to Congress was reserved for the states. This meant that each state could often develop its own policies. On paper, at least, the Articles did give Congress several key powers. Only Congress could declare war, negotiate with foreign countries, and establish a postal system. It would also settle disputes between states, but had no power to impose taxes, which explains why the Continental Army was so starved of funds. In addition, the Articles did not set up an executive branch to carry out the laws or a judicial branch to settle legal questions. But even with the war still raging, some states were hesitant to approve a plan of government that would give Congress any control over their affairs. It took 3.5 years for ratification of the Articles by all 13 states. 2 ordinances lay the foundations for land policy. Despite its limited power, Congress recorded some notable achievements under the Articles of Confederation. Perhaps its most important success was the creation of policies for the settlement of Western lands. In the Treaty of Paris ending the Revolutionary War, Britain gave up control of a region known as the Northwest Territory. No government had yet been established for this large territory that stretched from the Appalachian Mountains west to the Ohio and Mississippi rivers. Congress wanted to organize this land and sell it to raise revenue. To do so, it passed the Land Ordinance of 1785. An ordinance is a law that sets local regulations. The Land Ordinance of 1785 set up a system for surveying and dividing land in the new territory. After being surveyed, the land was to be divided into 36 square-mile townships. Each township would be divided into 36 numbered sections of 1 square mile each. Each section would then be divided for sale to settlers and land dealers. Section 16, however, was always set aside for schools. In 1787, Congress passed the Northwest Ordinance to specify how these western lands would be governed. This ordinance declared that the region would be divided into 3 to 5 territories. When a territory had 5,000 free adult men, those men could elect a legislature. When the population reached 60,000 free inhabitants, the legislature could write a constitution and form a government. If Congress approved both, the territory would become a state. A number of the ordinance's provisions reflected the principle of equality. Each new state would have equal standing with the original states, and its people would enjoy the same freedoms and rights. Furthermore, slavery would be banned in any state formed from the region. The Northwest Ordinance set up a system that became a general guide for admission of future states. For that reason alone, it is considered the most important law passed during the period of Confederation.